Hello and welcome to the latest of our episode series, Identity Security Unleashed for the AI Era. In today's session, we are going to talk about a modern approach to PAM with Akeyless. Privileged access management is a critical aspect of cybersecurity, and it has warranted changes over the years. Today, we are going to talk about what changes have happened in PAM, why do we need a modern approach, and we are not just going to talk about the product, we are going to demonstrate it. And I have with me Netzer Heruti, Director of Solution Architecture, who's going to showcase the product as well. Now, let me jump right in to introduce the product before we go into the demo. So before I talk about privileged access management offerings from Akeyless in more detail, I want to remind you of our platform announcement, which was the first of these sessions in this episode series, in which we introduced the Akeyless platform and also announced the AI agent identity security capabilities. In this, you can see that Akeyless is a platform designed for machine identity security, AI agent identity security, and human identity security. In today's presentations, we are going to focus on privileged access management, which is the highlighted portions of the platform, which is privileged AI agent access, modern PAM for vendor, contractor, and machine access, as well as zero trust application access. Now, I have used the term modern PAM in the title of the presentation. So what exactly is modern PAM? I've taken the liberty to put together this AI-assisted image to help explain this to you. Essentially, think of PAM as three generations. The generation one, which you see on the left, this is the initial phase of PAM. It was designed for traditional IT environments. It's centered on securing privileged access on on-premise setups and legacy systems, often through basic vaulting and manual controls. While effective for its time, it lacked scalability and struggled with complexities of modern distributed infrastructures. Then came Gen 2.0, which is cloud compatibility coupled with session management. So as organizations migrated to the cloud and adopted newer systems, PAM evolved to support hybrid environments. This phase emphasized human-centric access with features like session monitoring and management of static secrets. Now, however, it still relied on persistent credentials, which could become vulnerabilities if exposed. Now, automation improved, but the focus remained narrow, often overlooking the growing role of non-human identities. This brings us to the modern approach, or what we call the Gen 3 approach. This is PAM that includes humans, machines, and AI agents with zero standing privileges. Today, it represents a paradigm shift. It expands to secure not just humans, but also machines and AI agents, which now constitute a majority of identities in cloud-native setups. According to third-party insights that we have seen, it's about 85% of all identities that need to be managed out there. So this has become more important than human privileged access. Key requirement, of course, is ZSP, or zero standing privileges, where access is granted just in time and secrets are ephemeral, rendering them useless if compromised. This phase demands adjustments to systems for dynamic secretless authentication, ensuring compatibility across on-prem, cloud, and legacy environments, while minimizing risks from standing privileges. This brings us to our platform itself, our 3.0 vision. In this slide, you see our commitment to secretless. Zero trust access instead of a developer or a bot having a password that lives for a year. We use just-in-time provisioning. We create dynamic secret that is born when the task starts and dies when the task ends. By enforcing zero standing privileges, we ensure that if an attacker scans your environment, they find nothing to steal. They are always on keys, because in a world, the most secure secret is one that doesn't exist. Now to more capabilities of our PAM platform. Of course, another piece of the puzzle is solving the multi-cloud tax. A PAM product shouldn't mean managing multiple tools across multiple cloud environments. We unify it under a control plane. We have built it to be frictionless for people who actually use it. Whether your team is using a web portal, a CLI, a browser add-on, The security policy remains identical. And of course, there is automated enrollment. As you scale your Kubernetes clusters or cloud databases, Akeyless automatically wraps them in your security policy. You get comprehensive session recording and auditing across every environment without having to manually configure a single gateway. It's total visibility without the traditional operational headache. Now, enough of me talking about the product itself. There is no better way to experience the product than through a demonstration. And I'd like to invite Netzer, our Director of Solution Architecture, to now show you the product in action and also show you some of the key capabilities that we discussed as a part of this introduction. Netzer, on to you.
Thank you, Suresh. Today, I would like to show you in this demo of our Secure Remote Access platform, the SRA solution, those exact modern capabilities that we just highlighted. As a modern PAM solution, you can imagine, and we've just mentioned these, there are three main pillars of value proposition that we're giving you. And I believe at least two of them could be agreed that are more expected or more of a commodity around different PAM solutions, which have to do with the zero trust aspect, which is almost a given by now that you're expecting the end users, the ones that are actually leveraging this privilege access solution, to stay in the dark, to have zero knowledge of the secrets that are being used or the passwords that are being used to facilitate their connections. They should be able to do their job without being exposed to what led them there. The second aspect is the monitoring, the session recording, the ability to check the compliance boxes and account for the auditing perspectives to both, let's call it, intimidate or alert end users to think twice before they do anything undesired, but also to be able to retroactively analyze what really happened, like forensics. The most important piece that the modern aspect introduces here is the zero standing privileges. It's what we call the just-in-time aspect. Because if you've done the two other aspects very well, what you're leaving yourself vulnerable to is the ability of the secrets that were used by this agent with one solution or a bastion implementation with another solution. They would always be exposed at some point in time to a secret that is able to establish a connection. If that secret is static, then you're actually going back to having a secrets management problem, where static secrets, as we all know, could leak, could be brute forced, could end up in the wrong hands for whatever reason. And we want to double down on this aspect and make sure that it becomes not an optional, but a foundational aspect of privilege access, that it's established upon not just rotating credentials, which is a good start, but even what we call dynamic identities, users that are provisioned just in time and then revoked, taking your security posture to the very top in terms of making sure nothing even exists that could leak to begin with. So let's take a couple of examples. Have the demo circle around, I would say, three main use cases. Let's start with Windows. I believe a Windows remote desktop protocol, the RDP, is a very common use case, especially for somewhat more legacy environments that had to develop a lot of their apps maybe over a decade ago, very .NET based and Active Directory based, and the need to be able to connect to those environments securely without letting the end users know their passwords is key. And the ability to do it through Akeyless is relying on one of two options. You have a local Windows users approach that leverages the users created on a specific computer or server, but the more common or desired solution for most customers would actually be leveraging domain users that are created at the Active Directory or some Open LDAP implementation. And those allow you to connect to a variety of servers across your domain and leverage either literally a temporary domain user that is created just in time, which is quite an advanced use case and could be very relevant for vendors, right? Think about it. For zero trust access, oftentimes when you're working internally, you would have your own static credential or static user, which in Windows means a lot because you would keep coming back to it. You would save files on your desktop so that you could be able to continue working on something. But if you want to allow some integrator to do some very specific work on said server that's running on your production, you don't really want them to have, or you don't need them to have their own personal user for that environment. And for that, you could leverage an implementation of an LDAP temporary domain user. So it would allow you to connect through this temporary domain users from your Active Directory onto a computer or a server on the domain. This could be done in a way that even allows you to configure a custom delay so that the preparations for the new temporary credential are done and are in sync, not from the Active Directory domain controls onto the different servers. And then if I were now some remote vendor and I wanted to connect into here, I can do this from my own computer, leveraging the Zero Trust portal itself, which is a web endpoint. I had use cases that I've heard in the past where this ability were able to spare organizations the need to provision computers, their own company computers, to external vendors that before that was the way they enabled them to gain access to internal systems, whereas now they could do this even from their own laptops, having gained some IDP integration. This is always going to be based on some identity provider with SSO, using protocols such as SAML or OIDC against your Okta or Azure Active Directory Entra ID. All of those are supported. And then for the dynamic use case, as you can see, this can take more time because a new Windows profile is actually being created. That's very much I think for those of us who know Windows, some sort of a pain that we all accept when we first provision or first create this profile. But for your internal employees, for your end users, while this is loading, they would never accept on day-to-day operations to have this temporary user being created for them each and every time. Back here, you're able to see where you have fixed user profiles where you don't require a temporary credential that would be more relevant for external vendors that just need to do this one thing. Rather, some continuous project where you keep coming back to this server to continuously configure it. Or if you're an internal employee that require this privileged access, but of course, we still wish to keep you in the dark. So you get the operational advantage of being able to keep coming back to your environment or your desktop, but you're unable to know the secret itself. And it could leverage one of two modes, either to have it auto-rotate. It could be done so that as soon as this session ends, the secret always rotates immediately as soon as it terminates. Or we could even have a fixed user mode with elevated permissions. So right now, what you're seeing is that I was able to log in. It's behind the scenes. It could have either been based on a rotated secret for this user that is fixed, and you've seen the username when I logged in, or it could be where that user have its own permissions and nothing changed, or you could have a typical standard user that is able to log in here, but when they go through the SRA flow, behind the scenes, their permissions actually get elevated just in time, for example, by adding them to the domain admin group or a local administrators group for the server, and that would allow them to now do privileged things on said server or environment, and while as soon as the session terminates, those permissions get revoked. So these are different aspects of just-in-time that allow you the flexibility of both satisfying your end users that would obviously wish to have their own profile set and being able to work with tools that they're familiar with and not have to wait for a Windows desktop to be established for them each and every time they log in for the first time. But on the other hand, for those remote vendors that we mentioned, you have a lot more likelihood to want to be able to give them something that is literally just in time, where the identity itself, the username itself, is created and then revoked. All the sessions are recorded and are issued later or output into recording files that you can upload to different data repositories or cloud buckets. And with that, we also need to understand that beyond the Windows examples that talk about all sorts of secrets, dynamic secrets, rotated secrets, the elevated permissions, there are additional forms of just-in-time that could be used, for example, with SSH sessions. SSH sessions that allow you to connect to primarily Linux servers can leverage a very unique setup that is based on SSH certificates, where essentially Akeyless leverages its capabilities with respect to having a KMS capabilities to also become a private CA that issues certificates, SSH certificates, not for PKI, not for TLS, rather for SSH connections, where the public key is distributed across the different servers in a single public key approach, so that you could have Akeyless sign those SSH certificates. Is an interesting just-in-time concept because it's taking the idea of a CA, taking a public key and distributing it to a variety of servers, primarily Linux, and allowing you to issue very short-lived SSH certificates that facilitate access to those servers and would expire typically within a matter of a minute or so. It's something you could configure, but the recommendation is to keep it very, very low. So even though we're talking about a situation where the end users don't have the read permission on such secrets, they cannot see the SSH certificate that was used, even for the Akeyless gateway, which is the way we sort of instrument and facilitate those connections, even for it that can read or obtain such credentials, such certificates, the certificates would be expired within a matter of a minute or two. And you will still be able to make use of that session because SSH doesn't terminate it when the certificate expires. It waits for an idle timeout or for you to close it. Now, a good example here would be to leverage this SSH certificate into a Linux box that I have running in one of the cloud providers. And you can see that in this case, again, leveraging just-in-time, the session recording here is not applied at the same way. It's actually going to pick up on all of my keystrokes, and it's going to record both the inputs of what I write and the outputs of what comes back. So it would allow later, or actually at real time, to stream those session transcripts or logs into your favorite log management or SIEM solution, so that you could also have alerts for whatever is being done on those sessions configured for the SOC team or directly through your log management environments. This means that everything I do here is now on the record, and I know as an end user that I should, again, think twice before I do anything. But we still know that it may very well be that some of the end users would care deeply about being able to continue to leverage the tools they know and like, and wouldn't always be keen to switch to a portal access in a web shell, essentially. Even though this is a very robust capability and especially relevant for those vendor access types of use cases that we've mentioned. For your internal teams, we typically look at a successful PAM implementation as something where you can take the users onto this platform with the minimal resistance, right? Because I believe it's no secret, and we all know that when you make the operations hard for the end users, you're eventually going to lose, realistically. So it's very much something that we are keeping in mind and putting an emphasis on, thinking how could we onboard the end users in a way that would be the path of least resistance. So for that, we always have the capability of using also what we call the Akeyless Connect. Akeyless has a CLI also for our secrets management capabilities and others. And based on that same utility, we also have the Connect mode, where you're able to suggest to select, the target that you wish to connect to. In this case, I'm going to show you the exact same one that I just connected to from the portal locally, and the gateway through which you want to get the access. And what's happening behind the scenes is this Akeyless Connect, Akeyless CLI always has some pre-configured profile that it's working with. I'm currently using my default, which has my IDP, Okta, using SAML behind the scenes, so that when you first enter it, it would first redirect you to the IDP to make sure that you're still in the company and should be enabled that sort of permission or entitlement. I believe I'm already logged in, so I'm not sure it will actually pop that up. Yes, I'm already in. And then it's actually issuing this SSH certificate, connecting directly to the target. And now I'm in a completely native terminal experience inside a remote Linux box in a session that is being recorded. And I can do everything normally, including copy paste, SCP, all that is required. And from here, you're able to also get a glimpse of what that implementation of supporting SSH certificate looks like if you wanted to take a look at the etc SSH folder where we have the SSHD config pointing to a trusted CA key, which sits in a file right here. And this could be the exact same public key, similar to what you do with PKI CAs, where you have a root CA that you distribute to all the employees. You would have this public key that you distribute to all the servers, and you could still segregate access based on different claims or principles that different groups or of end users would need to be able to access different servers. All of those capabilities are supported while keeping the operational hustle to a minimum by being able to distribute this one public key. Beyond SSH, which is a very important use case, the Akeyless Connect actually supports all sorts of CLI-based or textual-based interfaces, which also extends to kubectl access to Kubernetes clusters. It also works with databases that expose a CLI, which are the majority of those. And similarly, we also have access to similar databases from this console. And you can see you have the selection between a CLI connection or a web interface. But I do want to quickly focus on the Kubernetes example, where just like I could, again, end up in a support shell environment, which makes it super easy for anyone, again, outside the organization, such as vendors, to come in here, see all these tiles, gain access to where they need to. You can control all of that as the admins with different permissions that you gain in SRA, including the ability to request access, have a workflow triggered against whichever platform you prefer, and have someone approve it and only then grant them the access to use this. But for the more UX user experience aspect that is truly super important when it comes to successful implementations. All right, so if I want to use Akeyless Connect also to connect to Kubernetes, to a more modern stack types of production environments, I could leverage Akeyless Connect and have it connect to a specific namespace against a specific Kubernetes cluster endpoint through the gateway using some dynamic secret, which behind the scenes, that dynamic secret could either be leveraging an existing, similarly to the Windows use case, an existing service account and temporarily issuing a secret for it, or it could temporarily elevate its permissions, or it could create a temporary brand new service account behind the scenes associated with the corresponding role binding or cluster role binding, and allow me to gain access in an audited fashion to this cluster through the terminal. But you'll be able to see in a second that when I'm in this session, I'm now able to run kubectl commands, or maybe I'll do something a bit more generic to see the different namespaces that I have running here. But it's still leveraging this CLI context that I'm in using some specific tool. And we know, we've worked with many customers on these implementations, they want to be able to leverage the tools they like. Some use Lens, some use Rancher, K9S. There are different implementations of what we call thick clients. And for that, we actually have a way to have them continue to use the tools they like. For databases, it could be dbeaver. For the Windows environment, it could be the RDP native. And the way this works is always based on SSH port forwarding or SSH tunneling. And we have different modes that instrument it. The more technical one is what I'm going to show you right now. And the more UX friendly one that I would like to have a full session to focus on would be the future coming desktop application. And we'll get to that in a second. But in here, I'm able to run this very same command, but have it open a tunnel with this Kubernetes. And then This is actually no longer the interactive session where I have to run the kubectl commands. This is now opening a local port in my environment that I could leverage with any of my thick clients. So for example, I now want to leverage this kubeconfig with my native kubectl client that is on my desktop. What this points to before I use it is just a server which is allegedly running locally on this port, which is the same one I provided here. And with this in place, there's nothing else really in here. I am now able to run this command and actually track any of those API calls and record them from the API server of Kubernetes. So I saw that an API was gotten to list or to get the namespaces. If I wanted to get pods in a specific namespace, it would also print it and show it in the logs. And that would be a very quick and easy way to leverage thick clients. I demoed the most basic one of just the native kubectl, but this could extend to different tools like K9s and Lens and others. But the real promise or the real goal that we have to take this further would be to leverage a native Akeyless desktop application that is already in a beta version that would allow you, even for the less technical users, to set up something like a tunnel to be able to click on connect to, it could be your DBAs wanting to connect to their databases, or your Windows admins team that wish to use their native RDP. They could just click from the desktop application, and all that SSH tunneling magic would be done in the background so that they don't have to establish it. It's just being done for them. I believe this is the primary use cases that we wanted to demo to you today with respect to our secure remote access solution. We hope you enjoyed the demo and that you'd be interested to learn more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Netzer. That was a fantastic presentation. And just to remind us on the modern approach to PAM, of course, this PAM unifies privileged access management for humans, AI agents, as well as machines. It's built for the modern DevOps and cloud environment. And also, it is based on zero standing privileges and just-in-time access. And hopefully you got to see some of those in action with Netzer's presentation. As you know, we are a part of, this session is a part of a larger Identity Security Unleashed for the AI Era webinar series. There are more exciting sessions coming up. We have only seen a part of the platform. We are also having special guests from across the industry. Coming up next, we will have an opportunity to talk about AI, data encryption, and key management. We will have a special guest, Todd Moore, the Global VP of Data Security Products from Thales Security in it as well. And of course, I will join you again with one of our other solution architects, Dr. Conor Mancone. And this time around, we will showcase encryption and multi-cloud key management. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next episode.